this very dynamic quality to Ayurveda. It recognizes that we are in constant relationship with our surroundings, with the food that we're eating, the climate that we're living in, the individuals that we're interacting with, the quality of air that we're breathing, the quality of water we're drinking. All of those things are constantly affecting our state of balance or homeostasis, right? And so there isn't, where everything is dynamic. There isn't like a stagnant, this is what's good for you and you should always do this, and this is what's bad for you and you should always do that. Ayurveda teaches us how to have a relationship with our body and to recognize its subtle cues so that we can respond to these dynamic forces in any given moment and make the best choice possible.
Welcome to Functional Moms Podcast, lifestyle medicine for women over 40. Let's age on our own terms.
This episode is for you. If you'd like to learn about your body type, how it determines your energy and digestion, we are going to learn about the oldest system of healing in the world, Ayurveda.
Kimberly Kubicke, an Ayurvedic Health Coach and founder of Indra Holistic Health, helps people harness their body's potential to thrive. She has been studying and practicing Ayurveda, a sister science of yoga and traditional medicine of India, ever since it revolutionized her own health over 20 years ago.
Kimberly studied at the Ayurvedic Institute, graduating as a practitioner and yoga teacher. We were lucky enough to meet her recently at Bellworks Health Expo here in New Jersey. And we're so excited to learn more about our body types and how we can gain better energy and digestion. Kimberly has a special offer for our listeners today, so be sure to stay tuned till the end.
Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Kimberly. We are so excited to learn more about Ayurveda, and we were hoping you could kind of start with explaining to our audience what it is, because I think a lot of people aren't really familiar with it.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored to be here. And Ayurveda, it literally means the science of life. Ayahu is life, and Veda is study of or science of, knowledge of. So it literally means the science of life, and is, like you said, believed by many to be the oldest system of healing in the world. And it takes a very holistic and natural approach, recognizing that every body is unique. So what is good medicine for you isn't necessarily good medicine for me. It all depends on whether or not something is medicine or poison, depends on for whom it's being given, when it's being given, and how much. This very dynamic quality to Ayurveda. It recognizes that we are in constant relationship with our surroundings, with the food that we're eating, the climate that we're living in, the individuals that we're interacting with, the quality of air that we're breathing, the quality of water we're drinking. All of those things are constantly affecting our state of balance or homeostasis, right? And so where everything is dynamic, there isn't like a stagnant, this is what's good for you and you should always do this, and this is what's bad for you and you should always do that. It's Ayurveda teaches us how to have a relationship with our body and to recognize its subtle cues so that we can respond to these dynamic forces in any given moment and make the best choice possible. The foundation of Ayurvedic medicine is our diet and lifestyle, right? It recognizes that our day-to-day habits, our day-to-day way of living is what really cultivates our health. So that's where we need to begin putting our focus. And then of course, if folks, teeter off into imbalances, there are remedies that we can employ to bring them back into balance. But kind of the starting point is self-awareness, understanding and appreciating your own body and your diet and lifestyle. How's that for an introduction? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that was quite an introduction. Thank you.
Yeah,
sure.
and it's exactly what we're all about here at Functional Moms Podcast. Like, we're about using lifestyle as our medicine. So
Yeah.
I feel like this is a perfect topic for us to get into today and learn a little bit more. So we'd like to hear more.
Yay!
Can you maybe explain a little bit more about like the different body types?
Sure. So one of the fundamental concepts in Ayurveda, this concept of dosha, and there isn't really a great English translation for the word dosha, but we can think of the doshas as forces or energies in our bodies that are responsible for all structure and function. So they create our cells, they create our bones, our hair, all of that. And they also govern the systems in our body, our digestive system, our respiratory system, all of that are influenced by these three forces. And those three forces are called vata, pitta, and kapha. And I just want to also warn folks that when you first kind of step into Ayurveda, it can feel a little bit like drinking from a fire hose. This whole different way of thinking that you're kind of like, what? But stick with me and stick with it. And it gradually becomes very intuitive. As one of my teachers, Dr. Welsh, likes to say, it's Ayurveda. It all makes so much sense once you really get a grasp on it. So these three doshas, vata, pitta, and kapha, each have specific roles in the body. So vata's main role is to govern all movement and communication in the body. It is connected with the space and air elements. So that gives you some insight as to what the nature of vata is like, right? What space and air are like. They're not very heavy. They're more light. Air can be very dry, also cold, very mobile and changing and reactive. And so that gives you some clue into the nature of vata. I should also have mentioned that Ayurveda is based on the 5 elements: ether, air, fire, water, and earth. So yeah, it's in that way, it's really grounded in nature. And then there's pitta dosha, which is composed of fire and water. And pitta dosha governs all transformation in the body, all heat, digestion, comprehension, all of that is governed by pitta. It's the body's intelligence, the body's fire, the body's drive. And so that kind of encapsulates pitta. And mind you, I could spend probably like 3 hours talking about each one of the doshas. I'm trying to give a little snippet here, but there's so much that could be said about them. And then there's kapha dosha, which is composed of earth and water. And kapha dosha governs all growth, all nourishment, and all lubrication in the body. So that dosha is very heavy and solid, right? It's earth and water. Those don't change very easily. Those aren't moved very easily. You know, when you compare it to like vata dosha, the air and space, it's much more solid and stubborn, much more grounded. And so we all have all three of these forces within us. You couldn't live without one of them. They're all necessary to sustain life. But we each have our own unique cocktail of them. And that determines our body type or our dosha predominance, what our unique mix of all these energies is.
Yes. So we can determine which, I know that we usually have one that's more dominant and then maybe one that's less dominant. Is that how it works?
Yeah, often, some people have one that's very predominant. Other folks have two that are pretty predominant. And then every now and then there's someone who has all three pretty equally predominant. And those folks who have all three pretty equally predominant usually enjoy really good health. The idea, and so balance for each of us looks different because the idea is that you want to maintain your unique ratio of the doshas. So if you're vata predominant, you want to keep that vata predominance. We're not trying to get everybody to have all three being equal. We want to maintain our natural state. And it's usually the most easy to go out of balance via the dosha that you're predominant in. So if you're mostly vata, you're most likely to have vata type imbalances. But you could experience any one of the three doshas being imbalanced in the body. There are certain times of year that different doshas predominate, and there are certain times of life that the different doshas predominate. And these doshas, I should mention, are like a continuum. They don't just exist within our body, but they're also seen in the world around us. They're seen in nature. And they're based on thousands of years of observation and patterns that we commonly see this air and space moving through the world together. And, we experience it during the fall season. That's when vata is the most predominant. We also experience it as we age, when we move into our elder years, out of our fertile years. That's the time of life when when vata is most predominant. Kapha is most predominant in our youth when we're juicy and plump and growing, right? And during the spring when everything is coming back to life and there's an abundance of moisture and growth happening, that's when kapha predominates. Pitta is in the middle of our life, and as well as in the summertime when it's really hot, when, in the middle of our life, we're really fiery, we're getting stuff done, we're managing a lot. Those are very pitta type activities. Yeah. So the doshas, we can see them outside of ourselves and within ourselves, and they're based on patterns and context, which is a very different way of looking at things than Western culture generally does, right? When there's an issue, we're like, get that under a microscope, let's zoom in on that issue, what's going on in that one place in the body. And with Eastern medicine and Ayurveda, we zoom out and we say, okay, what all is going on around this to potentially contribute to why this person is experiencing an issue here? We're not just going to look at, their small intestine and that's all we care about. We want to know, what are their relationships like? What kind of foods are they eating? What climate are they living in? What's their self-care like? That kind of stuff. So the doshas give us these reference points to come back to. And based on these patterns, we know we can predict trends. We know how things are going to play out. If we keep putting more fire into the system, then certain things are going to happen. We're going to have ulceration, irritation, inflammation. We're going to develop disorders like that. If we keep putting more earth and water into the system, we're going to have conditions of excess, obesity, growths, tumors, lumps. So the doshas, their nature gives us a way to relate to ourselves and to our surroundings that can really help us to make informed choices about our health.
So throughout your lifetime, could you switch then? I know you have a quiz like on your website where you can determine which body type you are. So it's pitta, vata, or kapha. Do I have that correct?
Exactly. Yes, you can take the quiz at indraholistic.com/quiz. And generally speaking, no, your body type is fixed at conception. And that is kind of like the way that you are meant to experience this lifetime. That combination of the doshas. So your original constitution doesn't change, but based on the choices you make, what you're exposed to, you can become imbalanced in any one of the doshas. Any one of them can become aggravated, but your original nature stays the same. And then as we move through these different times of life, we also then are more prone to be aggravated by that dosha that's predominating. So when we're kids, we're more likely to get congestion, mucus, stuffy nose. Mucus is a common symptom of kapha aggravation when there's excess mucus. So a lot of times, kids get issues like that, right? And then
yeah, I was going to ask you if you could explain like the different, signs of what body type you could be, without taking the quiz, just kind of giving us an idea of what they're about. If you want to, I guess you started with the kapha, like how children, that would be like mucus and things like that.
Well, so that's a typical imbalance. Kapha imbalance is mucus. And so the nature of each of the body types, I'll talk about what they each sort of look like and then what the symptoms are, how they each usually go out of balance. And it's important to think about the doshas as kind of our friends, our allies, right? These imbalances that they produce are warning signs to tell us like, hey, you're pushing your limits here. You're getting off track. Rein it in, get back to your healthy habits before this turns into a long-term disease or, more severe issue. So kapha types are folks who are generally bigger boned, thick hair, very grounded, more kind of slow moving, calm. They just have a very calm and sort of stable nature about them. They usually will be like on the larger and fuller side. They generally have very well developed chests and big eyes, big teeth, very nice complexions, healthy skin, thick hair, and usually an abundance of body hair. So those are some of the general like physical characteristics of how you might pick up on kapha. Another, in terms of pitta is usually in the middle, not too tall, not too short. Their pitta predominant folks are very efficient. They like to get stuff done. They make good managers. They like to be in charge. charge. They're very courageous and driven and determined. A lot of times they forget that they have a body that they need to take care of because they're so up in their head and just like looking to achieve their goals. So pitta, their bodies are, like I said, not too tall, not too short, not too heavy, not too thin, but well proportioned, physically pretty fit. They tend to be very fair for whatever race they're from. Their complexion tends to be fair, so light hair, light eyes, light skin, and their skin tends to be sensitive. They usually have, I'll leave it at that with pitta. And like I said, their personality very driven and goal oriented. And they can tend to be kind of intense. Their gaze is a little bit intense, and just whatever they're doing, they have a real intensity about them. Vata types tend to be very tall or very short. They also tend to have a hard time keeping weight on. They tend to be very light. They also tend toward dryness. So their skin can be very dry. Their hair is usually really curly and frizzy and dry. And these are like folks, I'm giving you examples of people who are very predominant in one of the doshas. You know, a lot of us have a combination of all three. So you might feel like, oh, I do have that, but I also have that. And that's totally normal. But this is like classic vata. They tend toward anxiety when they're out of balance. And they love new ideas. They're very talkative, very outgoing, right? Vata's all about communication. And so they love to chat it up and very creative, lots of ideas. They don't often have like the focus to follow through on them and carry them out. So they tend to be folks who like to move around a lot and try new things. They love change and they kind of hate routine, but they really need routine. So that's vata types. And they also have very thin bones. So just a lightness about them. Then each of the doshas has their own typical ways that they go out of balance. So for kapha types, it's a lot of often mucus is one of the early signs of kapha imbalance, and heaviness. So weight gain, feeling heavy and sluggish, lack of appetite. Yeah, feeling a little depressed, wanting to sleep in, oversleeping is very kapha aggravating thing to do, and something that when kapha is out of balance that folks gravitate toward. Pitta tends to go out of balance via inflammation and heat. So irritation, inflammation, anger, those are signs of pitta imbalances, generally speaking. And like I said, their skin is very sensitive. So that's a place where commonly imbalances might show up. Acne, rashes. Pitta also governs digestion. And so when pitta's out of balance, all the doshas have their own sort of digestive issues that they can accrue. Like I said, with kapha, weight gain and sort of a sluggish digestion. With pitta, it's more like fast digestion where they just can't get enough to eat. Food is running through them and they're always hungry, and they can tend toward inflammatory conditions in the gut. So acid reflux, heartburn, that kind of thing. And then vata types, they tend to go out of balance by way of a common dry skin is a common issue for them, and just dryness in general, chapped lips, dryness in the gut, which will lead to things like gas, bloating, constipation, where the stool is really hard, rabbit pellet stools. Vata folks also will a lot of times have issues sleeping. They struggle with insomnia or just can't get to sleep very well, don't get very good quality sleep. And then, like I said, sort of anxiety, uneasiness, lack of confidence. Those are also vata type imbalances.
Like you said, you can overlap. You could be kind of part of two different types, and then you could have symptoms from both types that you are. Is that correct? Okay.
Definitely. Yep.
Can you also be all three?
I mean, there are some people who are all three, and there's a small percentage of the population that is an equal balance of all three. And like I said, those folks usually enjoy pretty good health, but you can have all three of them being imbalanced in you at any given time. And typically if you allow these initial warning signs to go unchecked, then as you get further into the disease process, all three of them become involved. And then it's harder to fix. If you respond right away when you first notice some mucus congestion coming and you think, oh, I better, eat light and maybe have some ginger tea and get some fresh air and exercise, and nip this in the bud, then it's easy easier to fix than if it's, oh, I've been, struggling with this for 6 months now and I want to get it under control. Then it's going to be more challenging.
So I'm making an assumption that with each type, like you mentioned, like, if I'm the vodka type and I'm having a lot of trouble sleeping and I feel like I'm having anxiety and all
Yeah.
that stuff, is there in the books of this, Asian healing where they would give like the remedy? Like, this
Yes.
is what you do if you're this type and this is happening to you. This is like the formula.
Yes. Well, it's like herbal formulas are a little more nuanced than that are typically vata balancing. But yes, there are. So general suggestions to keep vata balanced is routine. So having a good daily routine, eating, waking, and sleeping at the same time daily. Very, very supportive to vata. And they hate doing it, most vata people. They want every day to be different and exciting, and having a routine is so boring, but that's really what their body needs. And the second really balancing thing for vata types is oil. So having good quality oils in your food to lubricate the digestive tract, adding good quality oil to your skin. If you go to my YouTube channel, which I think you're going to add those links in the notes, I have a video there showing you how to do self-oil massage. So doing that on a regular basis, making sure to keep yourself well hydrated, and drinking water too is in there as well. But therapeutically, when there's dryness, just adding more water to it generally doesn't heal the dryness. We need oil in there too. So oil and routine are the top two remedies for vata types. For pitta types, working with the mind is probably number one. So meditation, mindfulness, whatever it is, so that you're in control of your mind and your mind isn't controlling you. Usually these folks have such a strong, active, intelligent mind, and it just takes over. And like I said, they forget they have a body. They forget to eat. They forget to go to the bathroom. They forget to exercise. It's like, let me just get this, this goal accomplished. So working with the mind is very critical for them, and not taking themselves too seriously, like playing, getting outside, getting fresh air, allowing themselves to express themselves in a healthy way. A lot of times pitta folks can tend toward anger and kind of bottle things up, and then they just explode. But so, doing what they can to communicate calmly and clearly what their needs are, and avoiding getting to that tipping point. And then coolness is also one of the top remedies for pitta types because they're so hot. So cooling foods like cucumbers, avocados, anything green, basically any green vegetables, bitter type foods are good medicine for them. And, cooling off when the weather's hot, swimming, getting out of direct sun, avoiding being in a hot kitchen, that kind of stuff, doing what they can to keep their bodies cool, making sure the temperature of the room that they're in is going to be comfortable for them. So those are the main ways that we work to balance pitta. And then with kapha, the number one thing is movement. They need to move to lighten up, basically, because they can tend toward heaviness. So getting regular exercise, whatever that looks like. And Ayurveda is not a fan of intense exercise like jogging a marathon or anything. It's more like gentle movement where you're just going to break a sweat in your armpits and on the top of your head. You're going to just exercise to your capacity, but not like push yourself into this extreme, like you're dripping with sweat and bright red by the end of it. That, from an Ayurvedic standpoint, that's kind of creating stress in the body. So we don't want to do that. And diet wise, kapha types usually do well to avoid heavier, richer foods like wheat and dairy and sugar, really trying to limit those. So that's kind of the general, like, overarching dosha recommendations that the ancient texts talk about.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And so we were curious, as women in our 40s and 50s experiencing perimenopause, or if you're postmenopausal, are there anything that we should keep in mind as far as Ayurveda goes that would help us?
Yeah. So moving into that time of life, we're moving into our vata time of life. And vata also governs any big change that happens: trauma, change of seasons, change of job, change in your fertility, like this, changing your hormones. So we're all going to want to be tending to vata a little bit more as we're navigating that change. And so that is going to look like a good daily routine, oiling your skin, getting good quality oils in your diet, making sure to get good rest. That's another really vata pacifying thing. And if folks have issues with sleep, there's a lot of Ayurvedic things we can do to help with that. that, natural approaches that we can employ to help with that. Yeah, another really great practice to use to keep balance in the body, help to maintain your state of equilibrium, is alternate nostril breathing. So I recommend that for a lot of clients during this transformative time.
Is that like this?
Yeah, I actually have a video also on my YouTube instructing, but you basically inhale up one nostril, and then just before you exhale, you switch and exhale out the other nostril. Then you inhale back up that nostril just before exhale again, close it off and switch. And you do that breathing at a capacity that's comfortable for you. You shouldn't be straining to inhale or exhale, and you want them to be about equal.
Why is that a thing?
It's very balancing to the yin and yang sort of forces in the body, to the different. And when we're going through these hormonal changes, there's a lot of like turbulence in the balance, right? Our usual rhythm, our usual homeostasis is being disrupted, and our body is trying to recalibrate. And we kind of, the consequences of all our decisions that we made in our 20s and 30s when we were sort of invincible, they start to catch up with us. I
Yes.
say it's like we're running a credit card, through our 20s and 30s with drinking caffeine, pushing our limits, like
Right.
just go, burn the candle at both ends. And then when we hit
Yes.
perimenopause, it's like the debt collector comes knocking on the door and is like, you got to give all that energy back and all that,
Yikes.
force and power that
Wow.
you had.
I'm in trouble.
So, yeah. So, I mean, depending on what we've done, how we've moved through life, and also, some is genetics and things that are maybe beyond our control. We have these different experiences. If we've accumulated a lot of heat in the body and aggravated pitta in a lot of ways, then we're going to get hot flashes. We're going to have a challenge around that. So, and a lot of women notice digestive changes where, it's like, I could eat anything for all my life and feel fine. And now, like, who is this person that is so sensitive to all this different food? And so this practice, our breath controls so much in our body. It propels every movement, every function in our body is governed by our breath. And so it also very intimately is connected with the mind. And so when we work with the breath on a regular basis, we can help to lay a really smooth rhythm that is going to ripple out into our digestion, into our mental health, into our hormone health. So it's a powerful tool to affect a lot of things in the body that isn't.
How often would you do that?
I recommend doing it for 5 to 10 minutes first thing in the morning. So setting a timer on your phone for, maybe start with 5 minutes, and you can do it sitting in a chair where you're comfortable, where your spine can be tall, and, follow that along in that video I made to break it down. It's very easy. And then gradually build up to, you can even go up to 15 minutes, and doing it first thing in the morning. This is something I want to credit my teacher, Dr. Claudia Welsh. This is what I've learned through studying with her and through her work. I mean, she really specialized in women's health and hormones, but doing it first thing in the morning sets the tone for the day. We're the most impressionable at that time in the day. Sort of like we're most impressionable when we're first born, right? When we, as babies, something that happens to us then can have lifelong consequences versus something that happens when we're middle-aged, where it's like, well, I can get over that. So it's kind of the same with the course of the day. When whatever we do first thing in the morning, however we treat our bodies, treat our minds, what we wake up thinking about, how we eat, if we're in a rush or if we give ourselves like time and space to take a breath and do what we need to do for ourselves, that's going to set the tone for the rest of our day. The rest of our day, we're going to feel scattered and ungrounded or angry, if we started off in that kind of a mood, versus if we put ourselves in this place of calm and ease, then we're hopefully going to carry that out. And it's not like when you start doing breath work immediately that day, you're going to notice a difference. It's the continued practice of it that after a few weeks, a month of doing it, that's when you start to notice the difference. And so it's something you can do in acute situations. If you find yourself freaking out, you can do some alternate nostril breathing or just start watching your breath and slowing down your breath to give yourself a state of calm. But continually practicing it, even when we feel okay, that's really really what's going to change patterns in our body and create a healthy pattern that we want.
I really love what you said, and I wrote it down. Our breath is very intimately connected to our mind. Love that. So we had a breath therapist on our show, and we learned a little bit more about the importance of breath. And then hearing you talk about it again, and also just being more mindful about the breath, it does make a huge, huge difference in.
Yeah. We've noticed we've noticed that just noticing your breath makes a difference because we realized we weren't paying attention. We're just doing it. We don't know how it's going all day. We're not checking in. So just even checking in a little bit makes a huge difference.
Yeah. I mean, it's the second sort of limb of yoga. We think of yoga as just being asana, being, stretching and movement, but it's actually 8 different steps. And asana, the stretching part is just the first one. And pranayama, breath work, is the second one. And, as you move up the ladder, they get progressively deeper and the change that they bring is more potent. And I mean, I've just found breath work to be incredible. I have just by nature a very active, busy mind. And when I first started learning breath work in Ayurveda school, I was shocked at just how focused I could get, like reading tons of material in a day, which normally would take me like the entire week because my mind would be all over the place. So yeah, it's really potent stuff. And now, it's always fun to see when modern science like catches up with these traditions and what they've been saying for thousands of years. But now we're seeing that people are recognizing how there's scientific research, celebrating how powerful breath work is. So yeah, don't underestimate it. And Ayurveda is full of so many tools like this where, there are herbs involved and things to purchase, but a lot of it is just making better choices with what you're already doing, with what you're shopping better for food and timing your meals at a time that's going to work better for your body type, shifting what you're eating based on the seasons, things like this that are subtle changes, but they really do a lot to support your health. And Ayurveda is all about like preventative medicine. We're trying to not get sick in the first place. And so there's a ton of information on how to do that. That's where as much focus is on that as is on how to recover. In more, the Western approach, it's mostly like just how to get better, how to get rid of your symptoms once they accumulate.
It's sick focus.
Right.
Yes. Wait till you get
health.
sick. Yes.
Right, exactly. You mentioned about the seasons just a little bit ago. And can you tell us how the seasons affect our health and what Ayurveda recommends?
Yeah. So generally speaking, like in the winter time, in this really cold weather that we're in now and dark, it's cold and dark. And so typically our appetite increases a lot because our body is trying to conserve all the heat that it has. And so it moves the heat from our extremities into our core. And that protects our vital organs, makes sure we get good blood flow around all the most important places. And it also really fires up our digestion. And so we're naturally more hungry and we're craving like heavier, richer foods that are going to put meat on our bones, that are going to create an insulating layer of fat to keep us warm throughout the winter. Then and we also are more drawn to rest, right? Because it's darker earlier. And we're starting to feel the shift here now where the days are getting a little bit longer. But, in the dead of winter, there's so much darkness that it's easy to go to bed early and feel like you're ready for it. Your body just naturally wants to shut down. And so Ayurveda recommends getting extra rest during those cold months because you're building up your reserves for the rest of the year. This is a unique time where our body is primed to really take in a lot of nourishment and digest it well and create healthy tissue from it and to get a lot of good deep rest. And that's going to fuel us for the rest of the year. As we move into spring, our bodies start to release that fat that we've accumulated over the winter time because it's getting warmer out now. So now the challenge is going to be more to stay cool than to stay warm. And we're not quite there yet. I mean, we're still got freezing cold days, but we're moving toward that.
Now I'm understanding why I'm so unmotivated like right now in the winter to work out. It's really hard to get yourself going.
Yeah, because you're in this state of building. Your body's more focused on building. As we move into spring, we're focused on releasing this fatty layer so that we're not overheated. And and appetite kind of gets reined in because now our blood starts circulating more to the extremities. It's trying to metabolize all this fat, and it's warmer out. We don't need to worry about keeping the core warm as much. And so spring is considered a great and optimal time of year to do a cleanse because toxins love to hide out in the fat tissue. And when we start breaking down and digesting that fat tissue, those toxins are released into the body and are circulating. And so this is a great time to like harness that natural momentum that's already going on in the body and really detox, move all those out so that you don't experience things like spring allergies or colds or heaviness and weight gain, because we're moving into this more kapha time of year and like waterlogged, like swelling, and the body can sort of become the same way that the streams and the rivers are now like going to be gushing all this water. Similar things can happen in the body. So doing a spring cleanse also really supports the liver, which plays a key role in metabolizing all this fat and detoxifying the body. So spring is considered a great time to start moving again, start eating lighter, getting outside. The weather's inviting us to do that, and to do a cleanse. Also, bringing in a lot more vegetables into our diet. During the winter, we can eat like heavier, richer foods, meats, root veggies, grains, that kind of stuff, fats. Now we're going to move more into lighter things. And then in the summertime, it's considered that's when our digestion is actually weakest because it's so hot out and our body is just focused on trying to get heat out of the body. So summertime, we want to really eat according to our hunger. I mean, that's true all year long, but in the summer, we can habitually think like, oh, I need to eat 3 meals a day. I better eat, the same, like my eggs and whatever for breakfast and this for lunch. But actually in the summer, you need less food, generally speaking. And so that's a good time to go for, especially in the portion of the day, the midday, go for lighter things like fruits, raw veggies, juices, things like that, and wait until the cooler parts of the day to have maybe a little bit heavier foods. Summer also is a time of year where it's considered okay to take daytime naps. The rest of the year, it's advised not to, but because of the heat and the tiredness that can bring on. And, Ayurveda is from thousands and thousands of years ago. There was no air conditioning. There were no summer vacations. Like if you think about having to be out in the summer weather all the time, like not getting a break from that, you could understand why, people are going to want to take rest because they get so overheated. So summer, we want to really protect the skin. Also, cool off wherever we can, swimming, cooling foods. We're going to want to protect the body from excess heat. And also, and then as we move out of the summer, then we move into the fall. That's a real vata time of year. And so that is when usually we're going to want to manage dryness. Our skin may have gotten dried out from the heat of the summer being in the sun. And so we're going to want to really tend to that. It's hard to want to put oil on your skin when it's 90 degrees outside. But when we start moving out of the summer into the cooler months, we're going to really start noticing that dryness. So we want to pay attention to that. We're also going to want to start eating the oily foods again, because now we're moving into the fall. We're moving into vata time of year where it's going to be cold and dry. And we want to start building up that layer of fat. And so coming into the fall is another great time of year to do a cleanse before we start eating all that richer, heavier food and creating this insulating layer of fat and sort of packing the toxins into the tissues in the body. It's a good idea to clean the slate and detox and then, move into that building phase. And then during the fall, that's a time to really return to our routines, which a lot of times we naturally do, right? School starts back up and things start to get more focused at work. Summer is a little bit more about play. And from an Ayurvedic perspective, that's good because pitta kind of needs that playfulness. But then, once we move into this vata time of year, we all need more structure and routine and to make sure we're getting enough rest as well. So that's when we want to start oiling our skin again, eating at the same time every day, getting to bed on time, really locking that back in.
Awesome.
Yeah. Wow. It makes so much common sense, right? It just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And you said it was Ayurveda, right?
Yes. Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's what it is. I mean, this is folk medicine. This is medicine that's meant to be practiced by everyday people. There's a lot of Ayurveda that's very advanced and complicated to understand, but there's even more of it that is very accessible to everyday people. And that's, why I felt so passionate about wanting to study it and share it, because I just felt like everyone to be empowered with this understanding and to not feel so dependent on Western medicine that's expensive and impersonal and, doesn't have a lot of flexibility in terms of wanting a natural approach and, to not take pills, which I totally respect Western medicine. It's got some amazing strengths, but this system, I just feel like it gives you such a well-rounded perspective to understand yourself and how to relate in a good way to everything around you, your family, the nature. Ayurveda just makes life easier having this understanding. So, yeah.
Thank you. So, that being said, of it being made easier, the goal of our podcast is to simplify lifestyle change for women over 40. So, what would you say are 2 simple steps that a woman can do today to improve digestion and energy?
Well, I would say having a good routine, like I said, eating at the same time every day so that your digestion, your body knows when to get hungry. It knows when food is coming and you're giving it a predictable rhythm. I have a list of Ayurveda's eating guidelines, like general eating guidelines that folks are welcome to download for free. It's more than just what, it's like probably 10 things, simple things, when to time your meals and some how to set up your eating experience so that it's going to optimize your digestion. And you can download those at indraholistic.com/eating. But I would say eating on a schedule, that's one way. And also the alternate nostril breathing, working with the breath, I think is another powerful, easy tool to optimize your digestion and overall health. So much stems from our mindset and how balanced we feel. And it's also nice because, that practice you can do in as little as 5 minutes. And I think it's important for women, especially, to start their day with some self-care, just like a small act of, I'm going to put my own,
Even a couple of minutes. Yeah.
yeah, I'm going to put my own oxygen mask on before I assist others, and the breath work can be that. So a simple practice like that to start your day off and put you in a good space, I think that goes a long way.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you for those tips. And Kimberly has a special offer for our listeners today. Her spring cleanse will be happening April 9th through 17th. It is an online program, and you will receive recipes, shopping lists, and a detailed guide along with video demonstrations, and it's only $97.
Wow, that's amazing. Kimberly also has freebies on her website. You can take a body type quiz and download a free guide titled Healthy Eating Made Easy. We will have a link to these in the show notes.
You can connect with Kimberly on Instagram and Facebook at Indra Holistic, or her website at www.indraholistic.com. And she also has videos on YouTube. Her handle is Indra Holistic, and we will link that in the show notes as well. Thank you so much, Kimberly. This has been such an informative, I feel like we covered a lot of topic here and learned so much. So thank you so much for this.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Really a pleasure.
The information provided in this podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended for the purpose of diagnosing, curing, treating, or preventing any disease. We are functional medicine certified health coaches and not licensed medical professionals. The opinions and advice of guests are their own and also not considered to be medical advice. Always consult with a healthcare professional when making any healthy lifestyle changes. We would love to hear from you. Please leave a comment or review. Email us at info@functionalmoms.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the subscribe button.